أما بعد. One of the outstanding features of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum is that while they were learning, they were applying and implementing whatever they had learned. Sahaba radiallahu anhum tell us that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to teach them 10 verses at a time. And until they had understood those 10 verses and also had understood how to apply them, how to implement those verses in their lives, what were the commandments pertaining to them. Until they had done that, they wouldn't move on to the next set of 10. Similarly, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, whatever they heard from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as they were hearing it, they were implementing it. Once it was time for Jum'ah and people were coming into the masjid, and the Prophet ﷺ was telling those who were in the masjid, some of them were still standing up, coming in, finding space. So he ﷺ asked them to have a seat. He says, everyone have a seat. So Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu hadn't quite entered the masjid yet, he was just at the door. But he heard this instruction of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So he sat down right then and there, right at the doorstep, at the threshold of the masjid. Why was this? Because he had heard the Prophet ﷺ saying, sit. So he did not want to delay that command at his own discretion. He wanted to implement it right away. Then the Prophet ﷺ later saw him sitting at the door and he asked him, come inside and have a seat. So the application would never be delayed. The Prophet ﷺ tells us that من عمل بما علم ورثه الله علم ما لم يعلم. A person who implements whatever it is that they know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them the knowledge of that which they don't know. In other words, when we apply what we do know, it might not be a lot, but when we start applying whatever it is that we do know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts opening up the doors for more knowledge, and He keeps on expanding those doors. As opposed to someone who knows. Sometimes we hear a hadith or we hear a teaching, we say, yeah, I know that. I know that one. I've heard that, or I've read that. But really what needs to be considered is how much have I practiced it? Because when we don't practice what we know, then the exact opposite happens. Even the knowledge that we have starts leaving. The knowledge that we have already, it starts leaving. Anyone who doesn't use their knowledge starts losing their knowledge. And that pertains to any aspect of life, but very specifically to the matters of deen. Some of you might have the opportunities to sit in talks and lectures or halaqas, the programs, and you may hear a lot. But if you don't apply that, then a time will come when you and the person who never heard any of that stuff will be the exact same, because your practice and the practice of the other person are the exact same. So how much you know and what you have up here, it's not as important as how much we're applying what we do know. And if you were to sit down and think for a minute, just reflect for a little bit about how much you do know, you'll find that you actually know quite a bit. There are actually quite a few things, quite a bit of knowledge that you have. It's just about applying that. If you were to apply what you already know just right now, you would be more practicing than most of the ummah. But when we don't apply it, then we go on learning and hearing. It sort of comes, sits with us for a little while, and then it goes. And this becomes a cycle. And it's a very terrible cycle. It's a vicious cycle where you're learning stuff and then you're forgetting it. You're learning it and you're forgetting it. Every day you're learning something and you're forgetting it. And the next day you're learning it and forgetting it. And it just goes on. So much so that by the time you finish that course of studies, especially when it comes to Islamic studies, you walk away saying, I wonder how much I really know. Then one day, at some point, a discussion will arise, and you'll say, yeah, I heard about that, but I don't really know much about it, even though you've been taught. So whatever you do know, If it applies to you, implement it right away. If it doesn't apply to you, memorize it, learn it well, and share it with other people. Share it with your friends. Share it with those who are close to you. This is also a way of keeping your knowledge fresh. And this is something Sahaba radiallahu anhum used to do. They used to hear a hadith from Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When the Prophet ﷺ would leave, they would sit down and revise that hadith over and over and over again. So these are two things that are crucial for knowledge to remain and to grow. One is to practice it, and the second thing is to share it and to refresh it, to remind someone else of it, and inshallah your knowledge will continue to grow. This is a part of the legacy. Remember, we're talking about knowledge and the way that knowledge was acquired. Both of these things have been given to us hand in hand. It's not just the information, it's also the way the information was handled and dealt with. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make our learning and teaching like the learning and teaching of the companions of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een.